whatever choice you make today.
Well, thanks for checking out these clips on the web show. It was a lot of fun to sit down with Bob Gordon, who was in charge of the Gold Coast Bulletin for many years. National news that he retired after 50 years, as you can see there, so it was a pretty good effort. Of course, being in charge of a ritual for Gold Coasters. Every morning people read the paper, and that's a symbolic page with the AFL coming to the Gold Coast. So I'm sure he's had many magic moments. It was great to catch up with him. These are some of the early photos from Channel 9 back in the day, and here he is 50 years later. Alrighty, on the Gold Coast at Broadbeach, Bob Gordon, how are you?
G'day, Dizzy, how are you?
Well, mate, I met you the other day, or we've met a few times over the years, but I saw you the other day and congratulated you on a career. It's about to wind up, isn't it?
That's right. Come July, I'm off to retirement land and go cruising with my son up in the Baltic.
Well, it's been a pretty amazing career for what you've done in journalism and, of course, running the Gold Coast Bulletin. How did it all start? What made you want to get into that field?
When I was a kid, I liked writing essays, and I discovered everyone else in the class hated writing essays, so they used to come and crib my essays, and then I found out. I met a bloke, and he said, "Oh, you can actually make a career out of this, you know." And that was it. I always wanted to be a journalist then, from when I was about 11 years old, and then years later, Channel 9 started in 1959, 50 years ago, and.
So you were actually there, right, when it started?
I joined a couple of months afterwards. I was a copy boy with Channel 9, and I used to spend my Saturday nights down at Truth, down in the valley. It was very educational.
I can imagine it would be. Wow.
Back then, they were the years of the wild, romantic kind of reporter figures like Kenny Blanche and Rick Allen, and these guys. You know, they drank hard, played hard, fought hard, and wrote like angels. I could never get over, you know, the editor-in-chief and the chief of staff actually had an extension to their office phone in the pub next door down in the valley. And when I was a copy boy, Ted Gay, my first editor, a wonderful character, they went down the regatta, and I'd been there for a week and a half, and he and Jim Sweeney and Frankie Vaines, I think, anyway, the heavies all went down to the regatta, and they got stuck into grog at lunchtime, and here am I, you know, 18 years old, been there 2 weeks, and they rang up and told me to put the bulletin to air. So 2 weeks after starting, I was an editor.
So what was it like those times? I mean, if you could explain the difference between television now, it's just, you see truckloads of equipment and everything. What was it like back then?
Truckloads of equipment.
Really?
No, it was, in some ways, we worked in film. So you had two basic cameras, a sound camera, which came with a huge coffin case that you lugged around, very much like that you see in that movie Newsfront.
Right.
But the normal working day was with a Bell and Howell, which was a all-metal mechanical camera, virtually fit in your hand, about twice the size of the current little jobs, and you went out with those, shot in hand. First murder I went to, this was about 3 weeks later, we actually got to Inala before the cops, and some young bloke was hiding up in the hills and was going to shoot his girlfriend who just dumped him, and unfortunately for her father, he was up in the bush banging some crab shells and walked down and copped a 303 blast in the tummy because wiped him out. We jumped out of the car when we got there, and we were looking up in the hills, and a mate of mine who was a copper who'd been at Nudgee a couple of years before me, he came running up, jumping fences, and I sort of followed him, and whoom, you know, a 303 bullet hit the tree beside me. And Jim turned around and said, "Get back in the so-and-so car, Bob." Which I did.
It would have been a short career then, huh?
It would have been, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what's some of the magic moments that you've had in your career looking back? I mean, obviously now when you're about to finish up, must be some pretty amazing moments.
There were so many great times. I mean, I love journalism. I am going to really miss the buzz of the newsroom. I love words and writing and all that sort of stuff. I used to love TV writing. We used to fill in time editing before Kennedy was elected, and when he just started, there was another young film cadet there, and we put together a documentary on President Kennedy before he was elected as an obit, you know, and of course 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, he was assassinated, and the only film-ready or screen-ready documentary in all of Australia was this documentary Alan and I had, and it was put to air. But it was very embarrassing because I wrote it as, a new first-year cadet, and when I heard the script, I almost cringed, So I thought, but hey, that was awesome. It was an awesome event because in those days it took film 2 days to reach Australia. So the Kennedy assassinations, both of them arrived 2 days later, and the famous Martin Luther King speech arrived a couple of days later, and we'd edit those. Eichmann in the concentration camps when Mossad caught him and put him on trial in Israel, and we got a hold of all the film from the concentration camps, and we edited half our documentary out of it, and couldn't put it to air before 9:30 at night, and we still had to leave out a lot of the pictures we had because they were just too gruesome, and it was just incredible stuff. What else? Let's see.
You're involved in the Fitzgerald inquiry?
yeah, Fitz was, that was interesting because I'd just been poached from Canberra, where I spent 17 years. I was back on the Courier Mail, and it was a slow news day, and they had this young reporter who'd been sent back over in the poo a bit from the Sunday Mail, and he was sitting down the end of the newsroom. And when I was at the Canberra Times, he was one of my copy boys, and he worked on the student newspaper at the ANU. And I couldn't remember his name, but I shouted out down the newsroom, "Waroni, come up here," which is the name of the student newspaper. And Russ Hins had said there were no brothels in Queensland. So I said to Phil, let's go and do a piece on every brothel that he drives past from the Gold Coast to George Street, which we did. And I mean, that led to a whole series of stories. I think my favourite was when the police blocked off the valley so that Jerry Bellino could move his roulette wheel from one illegal casino across to his other illegal casinos. And the police, of course, were blocking the road for him, and
it could be Underbelly 5.
Yeah, well, it had its moments. I mean, my biggest worry as a chief of staff was making sure Phil came to no harm, and like all 22-year-olds, or he was bulletproof and didn't believe the danger he was in. I used to tell him, get rid of that bloody motorbike. It's too easy for him to knock you. And I don't think he took me seriously till he woke up one morning and used to live down Eagle Farm. He still does when he's in Australia, and there's several bullet holes in his old jalopy, so he was a little more cautious after that.
Yeah, taking it serious.
Yeah, so it was, they were interesting times. You didn't really know who the bad guys were and who the good guys were. I mean,
it's almost like the stuff outside of the paper is just as exciting as the stuff that's going in it, isn't it?
Well, it often is. I mean, I was talking to a lawyer mate yesterday, and he was saying, about the Gold Coast at the moment with the bikie gangs and the drug problems and everything else. He was saying, well, actually, it was much cleaner and more regulated when it was the cops who ran the underworld stuff rather than the crooks.